Good afternoon, everyone, and another round of applause for PJ and Roy Hirabayashi. We're so fortunate to have Roy and PJ open up the program for us this afternoon. So thank you both so much for all that you do for the community. Good afternoon to you all, and welcome to the Japanese American Museum of San Jose. I see so many familiar faces, and it's really heartening and wonderful. I am Vanessa Hatakeyama. I'm the executive director here at JAMsj, and I'm so thrilled to have you all here today as we celebrate and honor Eiko and Jimi Yamaichi by dedicating our Barrack's display to them. I know a lot of you here knew them personally, and we are so lucky to have a wonderful lineup of speakers to share a little bit more about them. And we are also very fortunate to have the most amazing MC with us today, a man who really needs no introduction, Jim Nagareda.
Thank you, Vanessa. And I think maybe Mike, I was busy today. Is that?
No, you're way better looking.
Robert Honda was busy. But I'm so humbled and honored to MC today's event. Thank you very much. And so you're going to hear a lot of stories about the Yamaichis. And so I was thinking back, when did I kind of first encounter them? I've known them for a long time, like a lot of you have. But I would say one of the first memories I have is working on the Centennial Committee with Jimi, and that was in 1990. So that was the first time I kind of, as an organized group, to work with Jimi. But I was the executive director here for about 5 years, so I worked closely with him on quite a few projects. And it's always amazing, him and his whole family and Eiko. They were all just so involved and helpful in the community. Even today, as we were setting up tables and chairs, the Yamaichis are right there helping us. So that's the kind of family that they are, and I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of stories about that. And especially the barracks that they made in the museum is just something that nobody else has. And I just got off of a project where we did a movie, and we shot a lot of the scenes here at the museum at Kinsukuroi, if you get a chance to see it. But a lot of the footage was shot here. So the barrack just continues to give and give. So for today, if you ever have to MC an event, part of it is doing a little research. So one of the things I did, I researched today the definition of a superhero. Superhero, one of the things they do is make the world a better place. They protect the public. They fight crime. And so we have our own superhero here. Our first speaker is one of our neighbors and very good friend of the museum in Japantown. I'd like to welcome Congresswoman Lofgren, superhero.
When you said superhero, I thought you were talking about Jimi and Eiko. I was thinking about when did I first meet Jimi, and I think it was at his 60th birthday celebration in Kanriki, which is the closing out of the first chapter of your life to open up to the next significant chapter. And that was around, I think, 1982, 83. I remember because my daughter had just been born, and I had not realized how long the ceremony went on. It was in the front, and I was nursing, and I had to leave, but I couldn't. And it was a memory I think back on. I didn't realize at the time that Jimi at age 60 would have almost 36 years ahead of him to make a significant contribution to our community and our world. I remember when the museum was first thought of, Jimi and Eiko obviously played a key role, along with many others, of getting the community excited. People brought in material from their own families that became part of the exhibit, and Jimi and Eiko understood that if we can't remember where we came from, we don't know where we're going. And so this museum has been very important. I remember after I was elected to Congress, there was a small funding shortfall, and the state was in terrible shape, and they were, what we're going to do, and I managed to get some funding to cover that gap and keep the project on course. Was what was then called an earmark. And I remember the late Senator John McCain made fun of me and made fun of the museum. And you know, I wrote him a little handwritten note, and I said, you may not realize that part of the group that's being honored here in this museum is the 442nd, the most decorated unit in World War II. And I think you're going to regret this comment as much as you regret voting against Martin Luther King holiday birthday. I never heard back from John. I now assume it was probably his staff, not him. But not another word was said, because I think we all realize the sacrifices of that unit, the people, the Americans who were incarcerated wrongly in World War II, but who stepped out of those camps to fight, and those who did not, but who remain loyal American citizens, all need to be remembered and honored. I remember when we had congressional gold medals for people who had served, and not everybody was able to go to Washington. I mean, it's a long trip and people were very old. And Jimi made sure, along with others, not just Jimi and Eiko, but others, that all of the recipients were honored in a way, right here in Japantown, in a way that was fitting, that they or their surviving families received the gold medal, but also with a display case that Jimi made sure he made that were simply just beautiful. So I think it's absolutely important that this barracks be named after Jimi and Eiko, given all that they did. And I miss them still. I haven't had a chance to talk to the family since Eiko's passing earlier this year, but of course Jimi a few years ago. We have a congressional resolution that I would like to present, and hopefully we can hang it in a place, someplace in the museum. But not only, I won't read the whole thing because it goes on and on about this museum and the role that Jimi and Eiko played, but I will note that this is quite unusual. It is signed not only by me, but also by Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, by Congressman Jimmy Panetta, and also Congressman Ro Khanna, who has a staffer here who also wanted to be remembered. Let me present it to you now, and let me thank you for doing this dedication. It means a lot to me and to our community and to the whole family of Japantown.
Thank you to Congresswoman Lofgren. Her office is right here in Japantown. She's been a big supporter of the museum and the Japantown community. So thank you so much I know she's really busy. She's gonna go back to Washington tomorrow, she said. So she's a very busy lady. So thank you so much, Ms. Lofgren. You know, as part of this research that we have to do as we MC these events, you know, I was wondering how many people on average do you meet in a lifetime? So I did a little research, and if you live to be 73 years old, on average, they say you're gonna meet about 80,000 people. Can you imagine that? And that's an average, right? There's gonna be some less. People like Congresswoman Lofgren, people like the Yamaichis, they probably met hundreds of thousands of people, you know, with all of the pilgrimages and all the tours that we have here and all the events and things that they're involved in. They probably have touched the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. And so to share some stories, our next guest is Hiroshi Shimizu. He is the president of the Tule Lake Committee. Let's welcome him.
Thank you. The Tule Lake Committee is honored to be here and acknowledge the work of Jimi and Eiko. I met Jimi in 1994 at the Tule Lake pilgrimage. He met me in 1996. It was a one-way meeting in 94 and the two-way meeting in 96. And since then, a little short of 30 years from when he passed, but we used to make 2 to 3 visits to Tule Lake individually in cars every year. And that would be Eiko, Jimi, and I. And so I got to know him pretty well, and during all that time, I thought that Tule Lake was his primary interest outside of his family, which is primary. Then as we began meeting for the Tule Lake preservation here at the old house, I began to realize we were second, and rightfully so. And in all of this work that he's done, the barracks that he recreated, I remember being with him when some people were visiting, and those people cried when they entered the barracks because it was so exactly a replica of what they remembered. And it's just fitting for him to be honored in this way. And I'm honored to represent the Tule Lake Committee in acknowledging that.
Thank you very much. So our next speaker is George Yamaichi. He's Eiko and Jimi's son. And George is, possibly a little overshadowed by his parents, because they're so well known in the community. But I tell you, George is right in there helping on all these different projects. Congresswoman Lofgren talked about the Congressional Gold Medals. And I know George was right in there helping to make those stands for the medals. He's very much an unsung hero. And I know this event's not about him, but he's been right there. He actually made the front desk and the store counter here at the museum. And I know that he remains busy even before the event started. We're talking about some new projects for him. We'll see what his family says about that, but we've got a few new projects for him. But let's welcome Glenn Yamaichi. Excuse me, sorry, George.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to talk about my mom today, because plenty of people know stories about my dad. So, my mom told me a story about camp and living in the barracks, so I thought it'd be appropriate today about that story. When the barracks were built, for the flooring, they used wood, and not the best material, but it had a lot of knots. And if people don't know what knots are, you'll see in wood little brown circles, and what that's from are the branches that grew out of the tree. And when they mill it, these knots would show up. And in fact, if you go into the barracks today, you'll see these knots in the floor. Well, during the camp, some of these knots would dry out and fall out, create a hole. And since the barracks were elevated off the ground, when the wind blew, the dust would come up through these holes. So her father would get lids, can lids from soup cans or fruit cans, and pound them flat and cover the holes with these lids. And this would prevent the dust from coming up when the wind blew. When my mom turned 70, she wanted to learn how to use a computer. She bought a computer, took classes, and one of the things that she learned were emails. And at that time, luckily for my dad, she was able to write emails for him. She would compose, type, and send emails out for all these different projects he worked on. So if anybody received an email from my dad, it was from my mom. She wrote them all. Without my mom's support and dedication to my dad, he wouldn't have been as successful as he was for all these different projects. She was the unsung hero behind my dad. And when JAMsj approached me about dedicating this barrack to my parents, my dad and my mom, I thought this was great. My mom would get some of the recognition she deserved that she never got. Thank you.
We're gonna edit that out, I think. So next we have a volunteer that has become a staff member, and this is Chisa Matsunaga. She is the education programs coordinator and the collections manager here at the museum. And I know that she spent a lot of time with the Yamaichis when she was here. And one of the things that Eiko participated in was the Buddhist Women's Association. So Chisa is going to share some of the memories from the Buddhist Women's Association. Please welcome Chisa Matsunaga.
Hi. First, I would like to read the message on behalf of the San Jose Buddhist Church Buddhist Women's Association in honor of Eiko. Eiko Yamaichi was a tireless BWA member. You would always see her happy face at our special services, Bonnen Kai, Kedo Kai, as well as our February Chirashi Zushi and Botamochi fundraiser and in Obon sushi making. She attended our Coast District and Federation of Buddhist Women's Associations conferences and then participated in all of the workshops. She knew everyone's name, greeted us with hugs, and then made our work really fun because she was there. You never had to ask Eiko to do anything. She was a hard worker, and it didn't matter how menial the task. If she saw a stack of dishes next to the sink, she was there washing them with a smile on her face. The Karen Nakimoto and then BWA members. The reason why I'm standing here today is because of Jimi and Eiko. They're the reason I am here. Not just because of this event, but in this community, in my role in the museum, and in the very life I led here. When I first came to San Jose, which is November 2016, I barely knew anyone. I had no friend, no families here. One day, Jimi reached out to me unexpectedly and invited me to the Yamaich family Thanksgiving. That experience remains a precious memory for me. Being warmly welcomed and then sitting in the middle of the family and then sharing delicious food and chatting and then touring Jimi's historical archive in his shed. Then Jimi and then Eiko didn't just welcome me into their house, but they introduced me to the Japantown community. They were the journalists, caring, and then without hesitation, shared their warmth with a young student from Japan who spoke terrible English. This is how San Jose Japantown became my home now. Even now, I get really emotional thinking about them. I regret not being able to express enough, face to face, just how much their kindness and presence meant to me, and how truly grateful I was. I know I'm not alone in feeling this way here. They're the reason why I'm here. As Karen and the BW members said, Jimi and Eiko were truly hard workers. I hope to honor their legacy by preserving what they preserved and passing on what they passed on to the future generation. with smiles and hard work like they did. Although I never had a chance to ask them in person, I'm continuing to learn about them through the museum artifacts and archives that they left for us. They were my sensei, and they will always be my sensei for life. I'm truly grateful that they were part of my life. Thank you.
So the next person we have up is Warren Hayashi. And can't say enough about him also. He's a former board member at the museum for many years. He is now on the advisory committee, but he's done a lot for the community. And one of the biggest things that he did was with Jimi, they worked on the Nikkei Matsuri Festival. And that continues to be the biggest, one of the biggest festivals in Japantown, which we're very thankful for. And so let's give a warm welcome to Warren Hayashi.
Thank you, Jim. You know, there's so much to say about Jimi. I just don't have time to share all of my personal experiences with Jimi and Eiko, because my wife and I were fortunate enough to spend a lot of time together socially as well as in the projects in the community. But just to give you a little background of who I am and how I got involved here, I'm not a local boy. I was born in Vacaville, California, went to the internment camps, came back, and then after the war we moved to Santa Clara. So I grew up in Santa Clara and eventually made my profession there. Even though my parents or my dad was really a farmer, I was not convinced that I had the fortitude to be a farmer, so I was fortunate enough to be guided in other directions. But as I became aware of the community and all, and I got involved with the Nikkei Matsuri. Actually, this was right after the war, when the community, after they celebrated the 200th bicentennial celebration here in San Jose, the following year, they encouraged all of the ethnic communities to provide their own festival. And so this is where the Nikkei Matsuri started to develop. And I was not involved in the beginning of this, but at the time I was a representative from the Wesley Church, and I was the food chair from the Wesley to the Nikkei Matsuri committee, and so I kind of learned the ropes of how everything was supposed to, how things would work. And at that time, the committee had, we had 36 different food booths all the way down 5th Street, from Wesley all the way past the Buddhist church. And then on Jackson Street, of course, they had all of the arts and craft vendors. And so it was a big event, and everybody in the community had a chance to participate, make a little extra money for their organizations. And after a few years, Jimi was looking at other things to do, and so he asked me if I would take over the Nikkei Matsuri. So that's where it all started. And of course, he was my mentor, and I learned from him and learned from everybody else. But being involved in that for over 30 years, we had a big event every year, and it's always been successful. So from that point on, of course, I've kind of gone on, but I got involved in the museum, and I came into the museum issues just as the museum was being built. When the museum was under construction, it was almost completed. But then what happened was the construction company of Applegate and Johnson went belly up. They foreclosed on our project, and so they left this building completely unfinished. And so some of us, actually Jimi was the one that kind of stepped up And because of his experience in construction and all of his friends that he had, he called all these people to come and help finish the building so that we can open up the museum on some kind of a schedule. These are things that, the little things that Jimi was able to do. He just knew the right people, and we eventually got the job done, and the building was opened a little bit late, but it was open, and we had a lot of things to correct, but it's now standing, and it's a tribute to Jimi for all the things that was done. One of the things that I've got to share with you is that Jimi had a memory that I'll tell you what, it was like a built-in computer in his head. There was nothing that he couldn't remember or do, and there were many times that he would go home one day, come back next day with something that he thought of overnight, and he built it for the benefit of whatever we were doing. The one classic one was the first time I went with Jimi to a weekend demonstration of the Japanese American community, and we were trying to spread the word of the people from the internment camps and all. And we went to what is known as Valley Fair. Now most of you, or many of you, probably were not here when Valley Fair first opened. It was one building. It was a Macy's store. It had a basement. Down in the basement there was a post office, a barber shop. At any rate, we were on the deck outside, and he had pictures that he had collected, and he posted them all up, and we had a lot of people stopping and looking at these pictures. And so he got the idea when we left. He had more pictures he wanted to put up, so he went home, came back the next day with 4 new stands that he could hang more pictures out. So I mean, that was the kind of thing that Jimi would do all the time. And the final note here on Jimi's memory is Jimi was in high school. When he was in high school here, he went to San Jose Tech. San Jose Tech does not exist anymore. And when he graduated from San Jose Tech, it was a vocational school where he learned construction, carpentry, and he had all the skills. So at the time that we were all interned, and he was in Hart Mountain, the Hart Mountain barracks were still not completely built. So he was actually assigned as a superintendent of construction. Here he is, 19 years old, just out of high school. And he got a whole bunch of guys together, and they built all the buildings for the incoming internees. And the barrack that you see in this museum, he built it from his memory of what those barracks were like. I mean, everything to the detail. It's amazing. And those of you that had any association with Jimi, why, you know, he could tell you things about anything that's on a moment's notice, and he's pretty accurate. And so it was a privilege for me to be involved with him, and I certainly have learned so much about everything that he's done and just life in general. He was like an older brother to me. And so I have a lot of these memorabilias at home that one day he makes something and he brings it over and he says, here, this is something you can use. I've got a bunch of those things. I mean, it's crazy. But Jimi was outstanding in that respect. And as George said, Eiko was the backbone. She was there all the time. And later in life, she started getting out and getting involved with everybody, more so than she did early on, I'm sure. So, thank you.
Half the fun of these events is seeing all your friends that you haven't seen for months and months and months. And so, you know, we've kept this program short, and luckily we're on time. And we have our final speaker is Will Kaku. And Will has been a long-time volunteer for the museum. He's been a docent. You see him come in almost every week to help some groups go through. He's also a Tule Lake pilgrimage docent, which is awesome. And he's a member of the Nihonmachi Outreach Committee, and they're the ones that put on the Day of Remembrance, the San Jose Day of Remembrance every February. So if you have any questions about that, please ask them. But let's welcome Will Kaku.
Wow, it's great, as Jim said, it's great to see all of you. It's been a long time. But I am so grateful that we are able to honor Eiko and Jimi today. Because obviously they had a big impact on this community. And they had profoundly touched my life, as well as many of your lives, as well as we heard from people like Chisa, who revealed how they helped her resettle here. But I'd also like to say that their spirit and their lives continue on here. Their stories continue on with this museum, as people like myself, as a docent, and other of our, the rest of our wonderful docents continue to tell their stories in this museum. And several years ago, talking about one of these stories, several years ago, I had the opportunity to interview Eiko, who was doing a film for the San Jose Day of Remembrance, and I interviewed her. And I remember at the end of the filming session, I was very emotional. There were tears in my eyes because Eiko opened up her whole life story to me. And Fran Ellis, who's also here today, we were both interviewing her, opened up herself to me, and we heard some very heartbreaking stories. We heard the story about how at the young age of 7 years old, her childhood was ripped away from her because she had to assume the mother role in her family. Her own mother was physically and mentally unable to care for herself and her family. So Eiko took on that role. And Jimi also had a lot of impact on my life, as I said many times before, because Jimi's life was not unlike my father's story. They were both dissenters. They protested against their confinement and attacked and fought against injustice. But unlike my father, Jimi was very open about his resistance, while my father kept his actions a secret for over 60 years, even a secret from his own family. And why did he keep these stories secret? Well, he felt, as well as some of the other dissenters felt, that the Japanese American community turned their backs on these people, that they labeled people like Jimi and my father and the other dissenters as unpatriotic, disloyal, un-American, and sometimes called them cowards. And so, as a backlash from this rejection of my father became ashamed of what he did, and he was very reticent to talk about his story. And amazingly, that shame also came in to me too, where I felt at times I was ashamed of what my father did, and I was embarrassed to talk about his story. But as I said, Jimi was open about his resistance, and he described in detail his tortuous path, taking that very difficult decision of becoming a protester and a dissenter. And through his stories, I gained more insight on what my father did and what the other dissenters did. And I became aware that they were also heroes and patriotic for fighting against injustice, just as patriotic and heroic as those brave Japanese American soldiers who paid the ultimate sacrifice with their lives on the battlefield. So through this experience talking with Jimi and how he was open about it, I started to open up and talk about my father's story in his fight against injustice and not shy away from it. So with Jimi and his stories, it helped me become a complete person, a whole person, and a better person. And that is the biggest gift anybody can give to another human being. So I thank Jimi, I thank Eiko, I thank the Yamaichi family, and I thank the museum for honoring and remembering these two very special people. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. But before you sit down, Will, can you come up and explain this display up here, please?
Okay, sure. Yeah, this is an amazing camp display that Jimi had created. You could see each camp, each of the major 10 camps are identified here, as well as Department of Justice camps. And if you take a close look too, you can come on up after the program. Take a look at his craftsmanship. Look at these guard towers, how much detail he put into each of these guard towers. And this is displayed at the Tule Lake Pilgrimage, as well as annually at our San Jose Day of Remembrance event. And I want to say, we're talking about George. George has done many things. These guard towers were in disrepair, and George did it. And he was just describing how difficult that was to do. And you found out, how Jimi actually put things together and some of his other ideas. So it's a magnificent display. Thank you for letting us take care of it, George. Thank you.
Thanks again, Will. So we're coming to the end of our program here, and there's always a lot of thank yous. We definitely want to thank Congresswoman Lofgren, Congressman Ro Khanna, San Jose Councilmember Omar Torres, and we also have Ellen Kamei is over here. I saw her come in. And another special guest is Judge Gogo. I can't see everybody in the audience, but thank you for attending. And thank you to the committee and volunteers for their dedication and commitment for several months of planning. And that's why they were able to make this a special occasion. Thank you also to PJ and Roy for the opening Taiko performance. George Yamaichi and the Yamaichi family for your support and involvement in the planning process. And for all that you continue to do in the community, thank you so much. Glenn Tsutsumi, thank you. He's in there always doing a lot of work for the museum, and we appreciate that. Thank you for donating and building the dedication display for today. Pam Yoshida also provided information. She was the architect for the building, and she gave us some information to help us. Chisa Matsunaga, she's the education programs coordinator. She put together a tribute exhibit and plaque that you're going to see when you walk through the museum. And thank everybody for coming and supporting and attending this event today. When they first asked me to MC the event, I was so honored, and so I told a few people that I was going to MC. And I kept hearing people say, "Oh, too bad they weren't alive," for this dedication, and that's true. That's true, but. I also believe that, in their passing, the fact that they influenced the community so much that even in their passing, we're recognizing them. And I hope that, 5, 10, 20 years from now, we're still recognizing them, because that means that they had that much of an influence on all of us and so many other people. So, don't think of this as being late. It's just a continuation of the recognition that the Yamaichi family deserves. And so thank you very much for attending. With that, I will hand it over to Vanessa, who's the new executive director. If you haven't congratulated her, please do so. We'll turn it over to her. Thank you very much.
And another round of applause for Jim Nagareda. So as mentioned, Jim was our first executive director of JAMsj, so it's especially impactful as he's somebody who worked with Jimi, and again, the first paid employee for our museum, so very impactful and meaningful that he agreed to do the honors of hosting this event tonight. And so now, the moment you've all been waiting for, the air conditioning inside the museum. It's here, you made it. So if you guys can give us just a little brief moment together, we're gonna actually have all the speakers and the Yamaichi family sort of lead the way down the side of the museum through the front door. We've sort of stanchioned off a path for you guys that will kind of lead everyone past the barracks area. The display and the plaque that we have outside will eventually be displayed inside the barrack, but for ease so that everybody could take a peek at it today without all getting crammed into the barrack, we have it on the outside wall. And so you'll have plenty of time to walk through the museum, down the incarceration wall, past the barracks, and then at the end, that's where the plaque and the dedication plaque will be. And right across from that, as Jim mentioned, Chisa Matsunaga, our excellent education programs coordinator, has put together a small glass case exhibit that features artwork by both Jimi and Eiko. We all knew him as a carpenter and a construction guy, but Jimi also did some amazing wood carvings, and Eiko made some amazing dolls. So we have those along with pictures of the family. So after that, you guys are welcome to come into the barracks, agricultural exhibit area right here, where our wonderful team of volunteers over here has set up a lovely reception for you all with some bites from Milk Belly Bakery, they're often at the Japantown Farmers Market and will be opening up a shop soon, but they're wonderful community members who really give to the community. And we also have some home-baked goods by some of our wonderful volunteers here in the crowd. So again, it's been an honor to have you all here with us, as Jim said, carrying on the legacy and the memory of Eiko and Jimi Yamaichi. So thank you for honoring us with your presence and helping us celebrate them. And with that, into the air-conditioned museum. Let's go. Thank you so much.
Yeah.